Welcome friends, it's Ray. Thank you so much for joining me today. In today's video, we are going to make an autumn themed card with alcohol inks. And I'm picking out a couple of greens, an alcohol pearl, Alchemy, and Butterscotch. Today's video is a part of the Card Crafters collaborative. We're sharing a fall theme, and I will link to the next person in the hop below in my YouTube description. Okay, I'm going to start with some Butterscotch alcohol ink, and I'm using some paper from Blick's that was labeled as Yupo paper, but it has a different texture. It's not as glossy, and that's kind of what I wanted for this project. It came in a big sheet. I cut it down. So let's start with some drops of butterscotch, and I want that throughout. Then I'm going to spray it with some isopropyl alcohol that I have in a sprayer. And let me see here. Blow it. I want to just make a splattering of butterscotch across my panel. Okay. And I'm using, this is a camera lens item that I bought years ago. But now Tim Holtz has come out with one. I've seen people use straws. I've seen people use condiment containers with the lid, because you just need something to blow your ink with. So now I'm going to bring in citrus alcohol ink. And these are all by Reinker, these inks, but there are many brands out there. Now when I think of autumn or fall, I think of greens, browns, golds, some really earthy earth tones. So I am just mixing this and blowing to get a combination of colors, mainly greens and browns, or golds in this case. I also have this lettuce green. Let me see if that gives me a slightly darker green, just to bring in some more texture. Yes. Okay. Oh, this is exactly what I'm going for. These colors and just mixing them. I don't care if I get brown at this point, because brown is an autumn type color. Hold this up. I was couldn't find my gloves. I think I need to get some more. And I thought I'd go out to the garage and get some, but I don't know where they are. And then I thought, well, I'll lose some crafting time. So I am just kind of going with it. I like this. I'm not planning to use it as a background. Otherwise, I would leave that white space. I like it the way it is, but I do want to cover my panel. So let me go back to, let me see what ink this is. This is, oh geez, I know it's here. I can't seem to find it. Citrus. How quickly I forget. Okay, so I'm going to bring in some more of my lettuce because it's darker. And I'm going to concentrate on these white areas so that I can hopefully get the majority of those filled. And instead of spraying more alcohol, I am just going to blow first because I'm just trying to get coverage. And then I'll bring, let's get over here, turn my paper, holding it with my reverse tweezers. Holding with something is good, especially if you don't have gloves, so that you don't get your hands all inky, hopefully. That's my goal here. So spray that. Some more with my alcohol. Oh, lovely. This is good. Let's give it another spritz down here. Then I can hold it and let it run, and then catch it and spritz it. Okay, that's a lot of green. I want more gold. So this is alcohol pearl. I think I'll use that last. I don't want that yet. I'm gonna put some more of my butterscotch in here. So just depending upon the tones you're going for, you can get some really good looks. I haven't used my alcohol inks that much because I'm crafting in the basement, and it is not as easy to ventilate. Only have a little ventilation here, so you definitely want to make sure you've got adequate ventilation from these alcohol smells. Ooh, I like that. Let's get over here. I am not going to use this entire panel, but I just want to make sure, or at least not on this project, but just want to make sure. Now a little alcohol ink to thin this out and make it move. That's my goal, is to just kind of get good coverage. So, but back to alcohol inks, you want to ventilate, make sure you have enough ventilation from these fumes. So for that reason, and some people wear masks, some people just open their windows. Like I said, I don't have the best ventilation in my basement, so I am going to stick to just making one panel. I like to make multiple when I have my alcohol inks out, but you know, I'm limited. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll take them out back and cover the patio table and really just go to town, make a lot of panels, and then use those during the off season when I can't be outside. So that's normally what I do. Okay, I am satisfied. I'm going to bring in a little more of this brown, let that trickle down is what I'm doing here. Lovely. Ooh, I like that. Okay. Alright. Gonna bring in, now I am going to bring in a little of this alcohol pearl alchemy and see what that does to this particular panel. Before I do that, just blow a little bit to thin that ink out, so that will help it dry. I don't have my hairdryer handy, or I could blow it with that. I don't want to use the high heat from my heat tool because that might be too hot for this. I know it will warp Yupo paper, but because this is it's a form of Yupo paper, but it's not as dense. I don't know, but I don't want to find out either. All right.
So I showed that first segment in real time so that you could really see exactly what I was doing in terms of my thought process and techniques for getting the alcohol results that I wanted. So now I'm bringing in the autumn leaves Fancy Dies by Hero Arts, and I will also be using uh, a Fall Leaves stamp set. It's an older stamp set by Hero Arts. Here I have used some low-tack tape to die cut my alcohol panel, and I did place a piece of copy paper on top just so I didn't transfer that color, that alcohol ink color, to my die cut machine. Here, one of my leaf dies did not cut all the way through, so I'm lining that back up and placing it in my die cut machine. Here I'm using my reverse tweezers to just push and release those die cuts from my dies. I'm placing a scrap piece of Hero Arts Palm cardstock in my MISTI, bringing in a sentiment from the Color Layering Grateful Leaves stamp set, and placed my acetate grid acetate sheet on top of my cardstock, lined up my sentiment, closed the door on my MISTI to pick that up, and then I have prepped with my anti-static powder tool, and am using some clear Versamark ink, and I am going to stamp that a few times before I apply my embossing ink. I'm applying my Wow Superfine Gold embossing powder and using a dry paintbrush to just remove any excess, and then I will use my heat tool off camera to heat emboss that sentiment. Here I've done two things. I have used my MFT Wonky Frames die, and two of the leaves from the Hero Arts Fancy die set, and die cut my panel and my two leaves. Here I'm placing a large drop of my Delicata Champagne Gold Reinker onto my palette, and spritzed and added some water and mixed that with a paintbrush. And so now I've placed my panel into a splat box and am just splattering that gold liberally all over this panel. I set that aside to dry, and next I'm bringing in a palm green panel that I have run through my die cutting machine with a Cuttlebug embossing folder. So it got that texture, but I also want color. So I am splattering that with that same leftover Delicata Champagne Gold and being very generous with that splatter. I want lots of texture, and that's exactly what I got here. All right, so I'm going to let both of those dry. Next, I have turned my panel over and am using some double-sided tape on all edges of my panel. And my panel right now measures about 4 by 5¼ inches. I'm partially releasing my release tape, and then I'm going to bring in my tacky glue and add that all around my leaves, getting in closer and adding that glue throughout the back of this panel. And then I'm bringing in a clear piece of acetate, and that I've applied on top and placed my acrylic block. My acetate is 3 3/4 by 5. Now I'm bringing in my acorn and an alcohol ink marker. Got this tip from Robin, the Delta crafter, in a recent video she did. So I want brown on the top here, and so I'm just coloring that with my marker. Here I am cutting the right side of my sentiment on an angle. Then I applied some craft tacky glue to the back, and I'm placing this on my panel right underneath my oak leaf, and getting that situated. Placed my acrylic block on top for some added pressure to make sure that it adheres. Next, I turn this panel over, and I'm going to add some double-sided foam tape to start forming the walls of my shaker. I want to make sure that all of my corners meet so none of my shaker goodies can escape. And then some of my tape, it's too wide and I don't want it to overlap with any of my open leaf areas, so I am going to trim it down so that it's not as wide. And then I'll save those leftovers because I can use that leftover tape that I cut off for, on other projects. I want to keep adding my foam tape all the way around until I have completely boxed off both of my leaves, and then in between my leaves, because I don't want my shaker bits to have a lot of room to travel around. So the less room, the better. Once I get all of that tape affixed, I am going to remove the release paper from all of the tape. And you may not want to do this first, but for me, this works because I always tend to shake things when I'm taking that release paper off. And here I am adding a little anti-static powder to the inside of my shaker windows, just so that my sequins shakes freely and doesn't, there's no anti-static, or should I say, there's no static that's going to allow them to cling to my window. So that's what I'm doing here, adding a mix of fall colored sequins from my stash to each of my shaker windows on this panel. So now I can add the back of my shaker panel. Oh, lovely, love this. And so I will have some details over on my blog if you want a step-by-step on this. I am adding now some double-sided tape to the back of this panel, adding some in the center and all the way around the perimeter. Because this is heavy, this is dense. I want to make sure that my card base doesn't buckle. I'm using a 120-pound accent opaque for my card base, and partially release my release paper and then position that on my panel before removing the remainder of my release paper. Next, I'm bringing in a couple of the leaves that I die cut out of my alcohol ink paper, or one leaf and an acorn, and will position that just to the left of my sentiment. I decided not to add any other embellishments. I love the sparkle and shimmer that I got with this card, and so didn't want to take away from that. Please do check out the videos from all of my crafty friends in this collaboration. I will be sure to link in the description bar below to everyone's YouTube video. I do show close-ups of this card design in just a few seconds. As always, thank you so much for joining me today. If you like the video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're not a subscriber, please consider subscribing. Until next time, good day, friends.